They say you can smell death before it arrives. That night at the Aurelio room, I learned they're wrong. Death doesn't announce itself with decay or gunpowder. It announces itself with Tom Ford cologne, Italian leather, and the kind of silence that makes crystal chandeliers seem to hold their breath. The briefcase came later. The mistake came after. But the moment I should have run? That was the second Dante Rinaldi's shadow fell across my section, and I convinced myself I was brave enough to look him in the eye. The scent reached me first. Expensive cologne layered over something darker. Gunmetal, maybe blood, definitely money. In my 4 years serving Manhattan's elite at the Aurelio room, I'd learned those three things often smelled identical. I was wiping down table 6 when the temperature dropped so sharply I thought the AC had malfunctioned. Then I realized it wasn't the air conditioning. Conversations died mid-sentence. Senator Castellano's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Even Maurice, our maitre d', who'd once served the Clintons without flinching, went rigid as a corpse, his face draining of color. The crystal chandeliers seemed to dim. He moved through the dining room like a shadow made flesh. Early 30s, maybe, with jet black hair swept back from a face composed entirely of brutal elegance. Sharp jaw, Mediterranean skin, and a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow that somehow made him more beautiful and more terrifying. Tall enough that the archway seemed too small for him. The charcoal suit fit him like it had been stitched directly onto his body, probably cost more than my mother's entire hospice bill. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart cold. Storm gray, almost silver in the amber lighting. The kind of eyes that calculated exactly how long it would take you to die, and decided whether that timeline was acceptable. Melissa. Maurice appeared at my elbow, vibrating with barely contained panic. His hand trembled as he touched my shoulder. Table 9. Your section. I glanced at the reservation book he clutched like a lifeline. The handwriting looked shaky. Rinaldi, party of 4, no special notes, no dietary restrictions. Just 4 letters that apparently drained the blood from a man who'd worked in Manhattan fine dining for 30 years. Problem? I asked, though my pulse was already accelerating. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. Don't make him wait. Don't question anything. And Melissa. His fingers dug into my shoulder. Whatever he wants, whatever he asks for, yes, always yes. Right. Another billionaire who thought his black Amex made him a god. I'd survived worse. I collected menus and crossed the dining room, footsteps silent on Persian carpet. Dante Rinaldi now sat at table 9, flanked by 3 men in equally expensive suits. One older with white threading his temples, 2 younger who looked like they crushed skulls for cardio. They all stood when I approached. Old-world manners that somehow felt more like a threat than courtesy. Good evening, gentlemen. I distributed menus with practiced efficiency, keeping my voice warm and professional. Can I start you with something to drink? Brunello di Montalcino. Dante's voice was low, textured with an Italian accent that seemed to vibrate through my sternum. The 97 Biondi Santi, if you have it. Of course he'd order the $2,200 bottle. We do. I kept my expression neutral. Shall I decant it? His eyes lifted to mine, impact like a physical collision, and I felt the air compress in my lungs. No need, Melissa. We're not here for ceremony. I hadn't introduced myself, the name tag obviously, but hearing my name in his mouth felt intimate in a way that made my skin tighten. Of course, I'll bring it right away. Melissa. My name again, stopping me mid-turn. Your hands. I looked down. Damn it, I was trembling. Double shift, I said, forcing steel into my voice. Nothing water won't fix. Something that might have been amusement or approval flickered across his face. You should take better care of yourself. The words should have sounded concerned. Instead, they sounded like he was cataloging a weakness for later use. I'll keep that in mind. I met his gaze directly, refusing to bow. Your wine will be right out, Mr. Rinaldi. I felt his eyes track me across the dining room like a sniper's scope finding its mark. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. They ordered the chef's tasting menu, 9 courses, each more intricate than the last. Dante sent back 4 dishes, never with specific complaints, just a slight shake of his head, and those mercury eyes fixing on me like I'd personally disappointed him. The chef would like to know, I said on the 4th return, voice carefully neutral, what was unsatisfactory about the branzino. Tell your chef, Dante said, his accent thickening with something that might have been disdain, that if he cannot distinguish between Mediterranean branzino and farm-raised garbage, perhaps he should reconsider his Michelin stars. The men at his table laughed, that horrible synchronized sound of people who laugh because their survival depends on it. My face burned, but I kept my mask in place. I'll prepare another selection immediately. Don't, he waved his hand in dismissal. Bring the check. I wanted to tell him that the Aurelio room had politicians and CEOs on a 3-month waiting list, that Chef Andre had trained under Massimo Bottura, that his branzino had been perfect, and the only thing rotten at this table was his entitled palate. Instead, I nodded. Right away, sir. 20 minutes later, I returned with the leather portfolio containing their bill, $4,183. Dante didn't even glance at it. He slid a black card across the white linen, with the casual indifference of someone for whom money was as meaningless as air. I processed the payment, returned for his signature, and waited. He scrawled something illegible, closed the portfolio, and stood. His companions rose in synchronized movements, buttoning their jackets like a trained unit. That's when I saw it. On the pristine tablecloth, positioned deliberately in the exact center of the untouched branzino he'd declared inedible, sat a briefcase. Not a wallet, not an envelope, a full-sized black leather briefcase. Dante flipped it open with 2 fingers. The restaurant's ambient noise died like someone had cut the power. Inside, stacked in neat rows, rubber-banded bundles that I recognized from movies, from news reports, from nightmares, was more cash than I'd seen in my entire life. $100 bills, thousands of them, maybe millions. Your tip, Dante said, his voice carrying through the sudden, suffocating silence. Around me, the world crystallized into hyperfocus. I could see Maurice frozen in the archway, horror painted across his face. Maria, one of the senior servers, had her hand pressed to her mouth. Table 7's elderly couple was staring, forks suspended. Even Senator Castellano had turned in his chair to watch. This wasn't generosity, this was a test, a humiliation, a performance designed to demonstrate exactly how easily Dante Rinaldi could buy, break, or own anyone he wanted. Something inside me didn't break. It sharpened. That exhausted, furious part of my soul that had been serving entitled men for 4 years. That had watched my mother waste away in a hospice I could barely afford. That had sacrificed my own dreams to keep food on the table. That had bent and bent and bent until I'd almost forgotten I had a spine. It remembered now. I reached across the table, slowly, deliberately, and placed my palm flat against the briefcase lid. Then I closed it. The click of the latches echoed like a gunshot through the Aurelio room. I'm not for sale, I said quietly. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes ignited. Surprise, maybe fury, possibly fascination. The air between us crackled with electricity so intense I could taste copper on my tongue. His men went rigid, hands drifting toward their jackets. Mr. Rinaldi, I continued, heart hammering against my ribs, adrenaline flooding my system with a clarity that made every detail razor sharp. I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept this. I slid the briefcase back across the linen toward him. The entire restaurant held its breath. Dante stared at me for 3 seconds that lasted 3 lifetimes. Then, slowly, he smiled, an expression that contained no warmth, no humor, only a predator's interest in prey that refused to run. Interesting, he murmured, so quietly only I could hear. Very interesting. He turned and walked toward the exit, his men following like shadows. The briefcase remained on the table, unclaimed, rejected. As the door closed behind him, I whispered to the empty air, I just made the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't know then how right I was. And if you think that briefcase was the beginning of this nightmare, you have no idea what comes next. But here's the thing, most people will never see how this ends. They'll scroll past, close the tab, move on with their lives while Melissa's story burns without them. Don't be most people. Hit subscribe right now because what Dante does in the next 72 hours, it'll make that 3 million look like pocket change. And if you leave now, you'll regret it. Because the truth about Dante Rinaldi, the truth I would learn over the next 72 hours as my life systematically collapsed, that briefcase was never about the money. It was about whether I could be broken, whether I could be bought, whether refusing him would prove I was too dangerous to leave alive or too valuable to let go. And the moment I pushed millions of dollars back across that table, I stopped being just another waitress in Manhattan. I became his obsession. The call came at 6:47 a.m., before my alarm, before coffee, before I'd fully processed the previous night's catastrophic decision. Melissa Moreland? Maurice's voice sounded hollow, scripted. Your employment at the Aurelio room has been terminated, effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be mailed. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone like it might suddenly offer an explanation. Through my apartment's thin walls, I could hear Mrs. Chen's morning news program, traffic already building on Amsterdam Avenue, the city waking up to a day that had just become my personal apocalypse. No severance, no warning, no, we need to discuss last night. Just gone. By noon, I'd applied to 7 restaurants within a 10-block radius. Places I'd deliberately avoided because they paid less, had worse clientele, ran understaffed. Suddenly, none of that mattered. We're not hiring right now, the manager at Bellanote said, not quite meeting my eyes, despite the server's wanted sign still in the window. Your resume is impressive, the GM at Osteria Morini said carefully, but we're looking for someone with different experience. At Le Bernardin, where I'd been interviewed twice before, the hostess physically blocked the doorway. We can't help you. I'm sorry. The apology sounded like a funeral condolence. By 4 p.m., I understood. This wasn't bad luck or bad timing. This was precision. Every door in Manhattan fine dining had been closed, locked, and barred with my name on a list I'd never see, but would follow me like a shadow. I was stirring instant ramen, the kind that cost 90 cents and tasted like regret, when my brother called. Tell me you didn't. Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Tell me you didn't do what Twitter says you did. Twitter? I set down the wooden spoon. There's a video, Mel. Someone recorded it. You pushing a briefcase full of cash back at... He dropped his voice to a whisper like, saying the name too loudly might summon demons. At Dante Rinaldi. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking I'm not a prostitute he can buy for... He doesn't buy prostitutes, Melissa. He owns people, politicians, judges, half the NYPD, and the people he doesn't own? Silence, heavy and suffocating. Those people disappear. My hand tightened around the phone. You're being dramatic. Am I? Remember Tony Marchetti, that union boss who tried to investigate Rinaldi's construction contracts? I did remember, vaguely, something about a car accident on the FDR. That wasn't an accident, Marcus continued. And Detective Chen, the one who was building a RICO case? Early retirement at 43, moved to Arizona within a week. Dante Rinaldi doesn't lose face, Mel. Not ever. So when you humiliate him in front of half of Manhattan's power players, I didn't humiliate him. You rejected him. Publicly. That's worse. The ramen had gone cold. I stared at the congealing noodles, my reflection distorted in the cloudy broth. So what do? I asked quietly. Leave. Tonight. I can wire you money. You can stay with Aunt Rachel in... The call waiting beep interrupted him. Unknown number. Marcus, I have another call. Don't answer it. Mel, seriously, don't... I switched lines. Melissa Moreland. The voice was smooth, almost pleasant, with an accent that suggested expensive European education. My name is Luca Santoro. I work for Mr. Rinaldi. My apartment suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. How did you get this number? Mr. Rinaldi would like to see you. He ignored my question entirely. Tonight, 8 p.m. A car will collect you from your building at 7:45. This is not a request, Ms. Moreland. It is a courtesy. The alternative is considerably less comfortable. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my pulse hammer against my eardrums. Through the window, Manhattan stretched out in its evening glow, thousands of lit windows, millions of people, and somehow I'd managed to paint a target on my back visible from every single one. The black Mercedes arrived exactly at 7:45. The driver didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, just held the door open with the mechanical precision of someone following orders. I climbed in because what else was I going to do? Run? Hide? Pretend that refusing would somehow undo the last 24 hours? We drove through Midtown in silence, past restaurants where I'd never work again, past streets I'd walked 1,000 times that now felt foreign, threatening. The city I'd lived in for 6 years had transformed overnight into enemy territory. The car stopped in front of a building I recognized from magazine spreads and architectural digests, all glass and steel and impossible angles, the kind of place where apartments started at 8 figures. Penthouse, obviously. Where else would a man like Dante Rinaldi live? The elevator was made of mirrors and brushed chrome. I watched my reflection multiply into infinity as we climbed. 40 stories, 50, 60. My face looked pale, exhausted, terrified. I looked like someone ascending to her own execution. The doors opened directly into the penthouse, and there, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's glittering sprawl, stood Dante Rinaldi. He turned slowly, those storm-gray eyes finding mine across the marble expanse. Melissa. My name again, wrapped in that Italian accent. Thank you for coming. As if I'd had a choice. As if every instinct wasn't screaming at me to run. As if my heart wasn't hammering so hard I could barely breathe. You wanted to see me? I managed, surprised my voice worked at all. Dante smiled. That same predator smile from the restaurant, all sharp edges and calculated danger. I did, he said quietly. We have a great deal to discuss. The elevator doors closed behind me with a soft, final click. The penthouse was obscene in its minimalism. No art on the walls, no personal photographs, nothing that suggested a human being actually lived here. Just floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan like a conquered kingdom. Furniture that probably cost more than my mother's medical debt, and Dante Rinaldi standing in the center of it all like a well-dressed nightmare. Drink? He moved to a bar cart that looked like it belonged in a museum. No. Smart. He poured himself 2 fingers of something amber. Always keep your wits sharp around dangerous men. Is that what you are? I asked, hating how my voice trembled slightly. Dangerous? Dante turned, glass in hand, and the smile that curved his mouth contained absolutely no warmth. Melissa, Let's not insult each other's intelligence. He gestured to a leather chair positioned to face the windows. I remained standing. Last night, he continued, seemingly unbothered by my defiance, you did something I haven't seen in a very long time. Do you know what that was? Made a scene in your favorite restaurant? You surprised me. He circled slowly, a predator assessing prey, and I forced myself to hold still even as every instinct screamed to maintain distance. That briefcase contained $3 million. Not a test of your mathematical skills, a test of your character. Most people take the money, they rationalize it. Just this once. I've earned it. Who would it hurt? He paused directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell that cologne again. Expensive, dark, dangerous. But you pushed it back. I'm not for sale. No, he agreed softly. You're not. Which makes you either exceptionally dangerous or exceptionally useful. My pulse hammered in my throat. And you brought me here to decide which? I brought you here because I already know. He moved to a desk near the windows, opened a thin folder, and slid it toward me. I didn't move. Melissa Ann Moreland, 27 years old, grew up in Queens. Mother, Patricia Moreland, currently in hospice care at Calvary Hospital, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months to live at most. Medical debt, $347,000 and climbing. His voice remained conversational, reciting my life like a grocery list. Brother, Marcus, IT consultant, recovering gambling addict, still paying off loan sharks. You put yourself through 2 years at Columbia, double major in business and accounting before financial circumstances forced you to drop out. You've worked 6 different service jobs in 4 years, never been arrested, never been late on a payment, never asked for help. Each word felt like a scalpel, precise and invasive, cutting through any illusion of privacy I'd ever possessed. You, my voice cracked. You had me investigated. I have everyone investigated. He closed the folder. But you, Melissa? You fascinate me. Do you know how rare it is to find someone with your credentials who hasn't already been corrupted? Someone intelligent enough to manage complex operations, but desperate enough to need the work? Someone with something to lose but integrity that apparently can't be bought? What do you want? The question came out sharper than intended. I want to offer you a job. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You got me fired so you could offer me a job? I removed you from a position that was wasting your potential. He moved closer again, and I hated that I noticed things. The way his suit fit, the intensity in those gray eyes, the controlled power in every movement. I run several businesses, legitimate businesses, hotels, restaurants, import companies, real estate development. They need oversight, management, someone who understands accounting, can't be bribed, and won't ask inconvenient questions. You're asking me to work for the Mafia. I'm asking you to manage legitimate business operations that generate legitimate revenue and file legitimate taxes. His voice remained perfectly level. What I do in my other capacities is none of your concern. That's insane. I won't. Your mother's hospice bill is due in 6 days. You're already 2 months behind. Marcus owes $50,000 to some very impatient people. You have $1,247 in your checking account and no job prospects in this city. He tilted his head slightly. I'm offering you $300,000 annually, full benefits, and a signing bonus that will clear your mother's medical debt entirely. The number hit me like a physical blow. Why? I whispered. Why would you do this? Because I need someone I can't buy, Melissa. Someone whose integrity is real, not performed. Someone who will tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Something shifted in his expression, not quite vulnerability, but close. In my world, that's more valuable than loyalty. Loyalty can be purchased. Truth cannot. I stared at him, mind racing through impossible calculations. This was insane. Working for a criminal, managing his businesses, becoming complicit in. I can see you thinking, Dante murmured, weighing morality against necessity, principle against survival. Let me make it simpler. He moved close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You can leave, right now. I'll have Luca drive you home. You'll struggle to find work, your mother will die in pain, and your brother will likely end up at the bottom of the East River. Or, or I sell my soul to the devil. Or you manage some restaurants and hotels and keep your family alive. His eyes held mine. I'm not asking you to kill anyone, Melissa. I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking you to do accounting and operations management for legitimate businesses. That's all. That's all, I repeated hollowly. But we both knew it wasn't. This was a door that, once opened, would never fully close. This was complicity, wrapped in a job description. This was survival. I need an answer, Dante said quietly. I thought about my mother's face, the way pain had carved it down to bone and determination. I thought about Marcus, trying so hard to stay clean, to build something legitimate. I thought about my abandoned degree, my sacrificed dreams, 4 years of bending for people who saw me as furniture. Fine. The word tasted like ash. I'll work for you, but I won't lie for you. Dante's smile was slow, satisfied, dangerous. Everyone lies, Melissa, he said softly, turning toward the windows. You'll learn. The office Dante provided was on the 15th floor of a Tribeca high-rise, all glass and chrome, and a view of the Hudson that probably cost more per month than my old apartment. My title, Operations Director, appeared on business cards printed on paper so thick it felt like fabric. The work itself was shockingly legitimate. I managed 3 restaurants, 2 boutique hotels, and an import company specializing in Italian wines and olive oil. The accounting was meticulous, almost obsessively clean. Tax filings were pristine. Employee records were impeccable. If I didn't know who owned these businesses, I'd have thought they belonged to some Stanford MBA with a trust fund and good taste. But I did know. And that knowledge colored everything. The Castellano Hotel needs new linens, I told Dante during our first weekly review, 2 weeks into my employment. The current supplier is overcharging by 30%. We were in his penthouse office, because of course he had a separate office in his home, and he sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black marble. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled his sleeves to his elbows, and the sight of his forearms shouldn't have been distracting, but somehow was. Find a better supplier, he said, without looking up from whatever he was reading. I already did. I'm asking permission to switch contracts. Now he looked up, those gray eyes finding mine. Melissa, I hired you to manage operations, so manage them. You don't need my permission to do your job. These are your businesses. They're your responsibility. He set down his papers with deliberate precision. I'm not interested in micromanaging linens. That's why you're here. Make the decision. Own it. If it's wrong, we'll discuss it. But I hired you for your judgment, not your obedience. The words should have been empowering. Instead, they felt like another test I didn't fully understand. What surprised me, what I couldn't reconcile with the man who'd humiliated me with a briefcase full of cash, was how carefully Dante respected boundaries I hadn't even articulated. He never called after 8 p.m. unless it was an emergency, never asked me to attend meetings in private spaces, never touched me beyond a handshake, never let his gaze linger inappropriately, never made comments about my appearance beyond a single, "You look professional," that somehow felt more intimate than any compliment I'd ever received. It was destabilizing. I'd prepared myself for harassment, for predatory behavior, for the inevitable moment when he'd demand something beyond my job description. Instead, he treated me with a professional courtesy that made me question everything I thought I knew about him. Until the afternoon, Vincent Russo walked into my office. I was reviewing payroll for the Castellano when my office door opened without a knock. I looked up, annoyance ready on my tongue, and froze. The man in my doorway was massive, 6'4" of muscle gone slightly to fat, with a shaved head and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He wore a leather jacket despite the August heat and smiled with too many teeth. "You're the new girl." Not a question. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click that made my pulse spike. Dante's little project. I set down my pen carefully, mind racing through options. My phone was on the desk. The door was blocked. The office was soundproofed for confidential calls. "I'm the operations director," I said, keeping my voice level. "And you are?" "Vincent Russo. I handle collections for Mr. Rinaldi." He moved closer, examining my office with casual interest. "Nice setup. Better than the last guy had." Course, he knew his place. Didn't try to get above himself. "If you need something, Mr. Russo, you should schedule an appointment through. I don't make appointments with employees." He leaned against my desk, invading my space with deliberate intent. "See? That's the thing you need to understand, sweetheart. You might have a fancy title and a nice view, but at the end of the day, you're still just another piece Dante owns. And in this organization, there's a hierarchy." My hands curled into fists beneath the desk. "Get out of my office." "Or what?" His smile widened. "You gonna run to Dante? Tell him Big Bad Vincent scared you? He doesn't care about his employees' feelings, honey. Long as you do your job and don't cause problems." "Is there a problem, Vincent?" Dante's voice came from the doorway. Soft, almost. Pleasant and somehow more terrifying than if he'd shouted. I hadn't heard the door open. Neither had Vincent based on the way he jerked upright. "Mr. Rinaldi? No, no problem. Just introducing myself to—" In her office, behind a closed door, without an appointment. Dante stepped inside, and the temperature seemed to drop 15 degrees. He wasn't visibly angry. His expression remained perfectly neutral. But something in his eyes, something cold and predatory, made Vincent take an involuntary step backward. "Melissa, did you invite Mr. Russo into your office?" "No," I said quietly. "Did he have business reasons to be here?" "None that he mentioned." Dante nodded slowly, then turned to Vincent. The movement was casual, unhurried. "Luca." Luca materialized in the doorway like a summoned ghost. "Yes, sir. Mr. Russo seems to have forgotten the protocol regarding management staff. Please escort him downstairs and remind him." Vincent's face went pale. "Mr. Rinaldi, I didn't mean any disrespect. I was just—" "You entered a director's office without permission. You closed the door. You made her uncomfortable." Dante's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. "These things suggest confusion about your position in this organization. Luca will clarify. Please, Vincent." Now Dante's voice dropped to something lethal. "You're making Ms. Moreland more uncomfortable by prolonging this conversation. Leave. Now." Luca's hand landed on Vincent's shoulder, gentle but implacable, and guided him toward the door. Vincent shot me a look of pure hatred before disappearing into the hallway. Silence settled over the office like snow. "Are you all right?" Dante asked, and the shift in his voice, from lethal authority to something almost gentle, made my throat tighten. "I'm fine. I could have handled— I know you could have." He moved closer, stopping a careful 3 feet away. "But you shouldn't have to. You work for me, Melissa. That means you're under my protection. Anyone who threatens you, intimidates you, or makes you feel unsafe—" He paused and something dark flickered across his expression. "They answer to me." "What's going to happen to him?" "Nothing permanent. But he'll understand that management is off limits, and he'll understand that you, specifically, are not to be approached, spoken to, or looked at wrong." Those gray eyes held mine. No one touches what's mine. The possessiveness in those words should have offended me, should have triggered every independent instinct I possessed. Instead, heat coiled low in my stomach. I'm not, I started. Your safety is my responsibility, he interrupted quietly. That's all I meant. But we both knew it wasn't. I found out about the hospice bills by accident. 3 weeks into my employment, I called Calvary Hospital to confirm my mother's care schedule. The administrator sounded confused. Ms. Moreland, your mother's account was paid in full 2 weeks ago. The balance is zero. My hand tightened on the phone. $347,000 was paid? By who? The payment came through an estate management firm, Rossi and Associates? The paperwork listed it as a family trust disbursement. I hung up and pulled up my employment contract. The signing bonus, $100,000, had hit my account the day I started. Enough to put a significant dent in the debt, but nowhere near enough to clear it. Dante had paid the rest, quietly, anonymously, without telling me. I found him in his penthouse that evening, standing at those floor-to-ceiling windows like he was contemplating his kingdom. He didn't turn when I entered, but his shoulders shifted slightly. Acknowledgement. You paid my mother's hospice bill. Not a question. I paid a medical debt that was preventing a valued employee from focusing on her work. His voice remained neutral, gaze still fixed on the city lights. Consider it a performance bonus. That wasn't our agreement. Our agreement was that I'd pay you $300,000 annually and provide a signing bonus. I never specified that the signing bonus couldn't be flexible in its application. I should have been angry, should have felt manipulated, controlled, bought. Instead, I felt something dangerous, gratitude twisted with something warmer, more complicated. Why? I asked quietly. Because your mother is dying, Melissa, and you should be able to sit with her without calculating how many extra shifts you need to pick up to afford her morphine. Finally, he turned, and the expression on his face was unguarded in a way I'd never seen. Because you refused $3 million on principle, but you're drowning in debt trying to keep the people you love alive. Because that kind of integrity. He trailed off, jaw tightening. It deserves better than what this world has given you. The words hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us was ready to acknowledge. Thank you, I whispered. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or hunger. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. We stood there in the gathering darkness, Manhattan glittering beneath us, and the air felt charged with electricity I didn't understand but could feel in every nerve ending. Dante took a step forward, then another, close enough now that I could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, close enough to smell that cologne that still made my pulse race with equal parts fear and something else entirely. Melissa. My name was rough in his throat. You should go. Why? Because if you stay... His hand lifted, hovering near my face but not quite touching. I'm trying very hard to be the man you deserve, the man who respects boundaries and keeps things professional. But you're making that... His jaw clenched. Difficult. My breath caught. I should go. Yes. Neither of us moved. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, barely contact, more suggestion than touch, and I felt it everywhere. This is a mistake, he murmured, but his hand curved along my jaw, tilting my face up toward his. Probably, I agreed, but I didn't step back. His phone shattered the moment, sharp, insistent buzzing from his pocket. Dante closed his eyes, exhaled slowly, and withdrew his hand like it cost him physical pain. I have to take this. His voice was strained. Of course. I walked to the elevator on shaking legs, pressed the button, and waited. Before the doors closed, I glanced back. Dante stood silhouetted against those windows again, phone pressed to his ear, every line of his body rigid with control. He was still watching me when the elevator doors sealed shut. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop replaying the moment. His hand on my face, the hunger in his eyes, the way my body had responded to his proximity with an intensity that terrified me. I was falling for a man who'd tried to buy me with a briefcase full of cash. A man whose world operated by rules I didn't understand. A man who'd just paid my mother's medical debt without asking for anything in return. A man who was dangerous, magnetic, and somehow showing me more respect than anyone ever had. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sleep well, Melissa." I stared at the message, pulse hammering, and didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. The discrepancy was small, almost invisible. A wine shipment from Brunello Imports, one of the companies under my management, showed a payment of $47,000 for what should have been a $32,000 order. I noticed it on a Thursday afternoon, 3 months into my employment, while reconciling quarterly expenses. Probably a clerical error. A duplicate entry, maybe. I pulled up the invoice. The numbers matched. $47,000 for 200 cases of Barolo. I calculated the per-case cost. $235 per case for wine that typically wholesaled at $160. My stomach tightened. I pulled up the previous month's shipments. Same supplier, same wine. That order showed $38,000 for 180 cases, $200 per case. The month before, $41,000 for 190 cases, 200 per case. Every single shipment was overpriced. Not by enough to be obvious, but by enough to be consistent. I spent the next 4 hours pulling records, cross-referencing invoices, checking supplier agreements. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in chemicals. Slow, inevitable, damning. Brunello Imports wasn't just overpaying for wine. The company was paying for shipments that never arrived, recording deliveries to restaurants that didn't exist, routing payments through 3 different offshore accounts before they reached the supplier. And all of it, every falsified invoice, every phantom delivery, every carefully laundered dollar, had my signature on the approval forms. I made it to the bathroom before I vomited. Hands shaking, I gripped the porcelain sink and stared at my reflection. My face looked gray, hollow-eyed. The face of someone who'd just realized they'd been signing their name to felonies for 3 months. Dante had lied. These businesses weren't legitimate. They were fronts. Elaborate, pristine fronts designed to clean money from whatever illegal operations he ran in the shadows. And he'd placed me, with my Columbia accounting background and my desperate need for employment, right in the center of it, making me complicit, making me guilty, making me his. The rage hit like a tidal wave, burning away the fear, the nausea, the betrayal, until all that remained was white-hot fury. I found him at his usual table at Impero, one of the restaurants I managed. He was meeting with 3 men in expensive suits. Lawyers, maybe, or politicians. The kind of people who could afford to be seen with Dante Rinaldi because they'd already sold whatever pieces of their souls allowed them to sleep at night. "We need to talk." My voice cut across their conversation like a blade. "Now." Dante's eyes lifted to mine, and something in my expression made him go very still. "Gentlemen." He didn't look away from me. "We'll continue this tomorrow." They left without argument, chairs scraping against hardwood, uncomfortable glances exchanged. The restaurant's ambient noise, clinking glasses, murmured conversations, jazz from the speakers, seemed to fade into white noise. I waited until we were alone. Then I dropped the folder on the table. "Brunello Imports." My voice shook despite my best efforts to control it. "Care to explain why we're paying $235 per case for wine that wholesales at $160? Dante's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Or perhaps you'd like to explain the shipments to La Stella Bella, a restaurant that doesn't actually exist? Or the payments routed through accounts in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland before reaching the supplier?" I leaned forward, hands flat on the table. You said these businesses were legitimate. You said I wouldn't be doing anything illegal. You lied. Melissa, how long? I demanded. How long have I been signing money laundering approvals? How many felonies have I committed with my signature while you sat there playing the reasonable businessman? Lower your voice. His tone carried quiet authority, but I was beyond caring. Don't you dare tell me to lower my voice. You made me a criminal. You knew I wouldn't have taken this job if I understood what you were really asking me to do. So you lied. You dressed it up in legitimate business operations and clean accounting, and you let me sign my name to federal crimes while telling myself I was just managing restaurants and hotels. Dante stood slowly, buttoning his jacket with precise movements. This is not the place for this conversation. I don't care where we... The car. Now. The command in his voice was absolute. Or I will have Luca carry you out, and tomorrow every employee in this restaurant will be talking about how the new operations director had a public meltdown. Your choice. I grabbed the folder and walked toward the exit, spine rigid with fury. Behind me, I heard Dante's footsteps, measured and calm, as if he hadn't just been confronted with evidence of his betrayal. The Mercedes was parked outside. Luca opened the door without comment, though his expression suggested he'd heard enough through whatever security feed monitored the restaurant. I climbed in. Dante followed. The door closed, sealing us in leather and tension. Drive, Dante told Luca. Anywhere. Don't stop until I tell you. The car pulled into traffic. Manhattan streamed past the tinted windows, thousands of people living their lives, completely unaware that mine was imploding. You used me, I said quietly, staring at the folder in my lap. You identified someone desperate enough to need the work, ethical enough to appear legitimate, and skilled enough to actually manage the operations. Then you buried the illegal activity deep enough that I wouldn't find it immediately. How long did you think you had? 6 months? A year? How long before I either discovered the truth or became so complicit I couldn't leave? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I turned to face him, and the fury in my chest felt like it might crack my ribs. Explain to me how this isn't exactly what it looks like. Dante's hands were folded in his lap, knuckles white with tension. The businesses are mostly legitimate. The restaurants, the hotels, those operations are clean. Brunello Imports is the only company engaged in supplementary activities. Supplementary activities. That's what we're calling felony money laundering now? I needed someone I could trust to manage the legitimate operations. Someone whose integrity was real, whose accounting was pristine, whose background would withstand scrutiny. You were perfect. I was convenient. The word tasted like poison. Desperate and qualified. The ideal patsy. No. His voice sharpened. You were extraordinary. You are extraordinary. Do you think I give a damn about wine shipments and hotel linens? I have dozens of people who could manage those operations competently, but you... He stopped, jaw clenching so hard I could see the muscle jump. But what? I needed you near me. The words came out raw, unguarded. From the moment you pushed that briefcase back across the table, you were all I could think about. Your integrity, your intelligence, the way you looked at me like I was just another entitled bastard who needed to learn manners. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How intoxicating it is to have someone see you clearly and not flinch? So you decided to trap me in your criminal empire? My voice cracked. Make me dependent on you, complicit with you, unable to leave without destroying myself? I wanted to protect you. He turned to face me, and the naked vulnerability in his expression was somehow more disturbing than his usual control. From me, from this world, from the reality of what I am. So I gave you businesses that were clean, work that was legitimate, a salary that would let you breathe for the first time in years. Yes, Brunello Imports handles transactions beyond wine shipments. But you weren't supposed to know. You weren't supposed to look that deeply. You were supposed to be safe. Safe? The laugh that escaped me was brittle. I've committed federal crimes, Dante. I've signed documents that could send me to prison. I'm an accomplice to money laundering. How is that safe? Because no one will ever find it. His voice dropped to something fierce. The accounting is perfect. The trail is untraceable. The only person who could ever connect you to any illegality is me, and I would burn everything I've built before I let anyone touch you. You don't get to make that choice for me. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You don't get to decide what risks I take with my life, my freedom, my soul. That's not protection, Dante. That's control. That's ownership. That's everything I told you I wouldn't accept. I know. His hands curled into fists. I know. And I did it anyway because the alternative was letting you walk away, and I... He stopped, exhaled shakily. I couldn't. The admission hung between us, heavy and devastating. You're a coward. My voice was quiet now, empty of rage, filled only with exhausted betrayal. You couldn't take the risk that I might choose to stay knowing the truth, so you made the choice for me. You trapped me, dressed it up as opportunity, and told yourself it was protection. Yes. The single word carried the weight of confession. I am a coward. I'm a criminal, a liar, and a man so fundamentally broken that the only way I could keep you in my life was through manipulation and deceit. Is that what you want to hear? That I'm everything you think I am? I want to hear that I have a choice, I whispered. That I'm not just another possession you've acquired through money and lies. Dante reached for me, then stopped himself, hand hovering in the space between us. You always have a choice, Melissa. You've always had a choice, even now. Walk away. I'll pay the severance I promised. I'll ensure you're never connected to any of this. I'll disappear from your life completely. Just say the word. And my mother's medical bills? My brother's debts? The fact that I'm blacklisted from every legitimate restaurant in Manhattan? All handled, paid, resolved. You'll have enough money to start over anywhere you want. His voice was rough. I'll give you freedom, Melissa. The one thing I've never given anyone. Just... His hand dropped. Just go, please, before I do something even more unforgivable and beg you to stay. I stared at him. This man who'd humiliated me, hired me, protected me, betrayed me. This man who'd paid my mother's hospice bills and made me a criminal. This man whose eyes held such desperate, furious longing that it physically hurt to witness. You lied to me, I said quietly. Yes. You made me complicit in your crimes. Yes. You trapped me because you couldn't risk me choosing to leave. Yes. His voice cracked on the word. I opened the car door while we were stopped at a red light. Then you were right about one thing. You do ruin everything you touch. I stepped out into the Manhattan evening, folder clutched against my chest, and walked away. Behind me, I heard Dante's voice, barely audible. Melissa... I didn't turn around. 3 blocks later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better than what I gave you. D. I deleted it. Then I pulled it from the trash and read it 17 more times before I finally fell asleep that night, face wet with tears I'd refused to shed in his presence. I didn't quit. I should have. Should have walked away, reported him to the FBI, disappeared to some city where Dante Rinaldi's name meant nothing. Instead, I showed up to the office the next morning with coffee and spite, pulled up the Brunello Imports files, and began systematically documenting every illegal transaction. Not to turn him in. Not yet, anyway. To understand exactly how deep the rot went. To know precisely what I was complicit in. To hurt him the only way I knew how, by refusing to give him the satisfaction of my absence. Dante didn't call, didn't text, didn't summon me to his penthouse for our weekly reviews. For 3 weeks, I managed his empire in complete silence, and that silence felt like punishment for both of us. But I heard things. "Did you hear about the thing in Red Hook?" Maria whispered to another server during my inspection of Impero's dinner service. Dante's crew hit one of the Calabrese warehouses. 3 hospitalized, 1 missing. Vincent Russo's in the ICU, a hotel manager mentioned during a routine meeting. Rumor is he said something he shouldn't have, and Dante handled it personally. "Boss has been different lately," Luca said carefully when I called about a vendor payment. "More volatile. If you need to reach him, maybe text first." I told myself I didn't care. I told myself his spiral into violence had nothing to do with me. I told myself the guilt gnawing at my chest was about complicity, not concern. I was lying to myself as thoroughly as Dante had lied to me. The knock came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was reviewing expense reports in bed, my new pathetic routine, when the sound cut through my apartment's usual symphony of sirens and neighbors' arguments. No one visited me. Marcus lived in Brooklyn, and I'd systematically ghosted every friend I'd had before accepting blood money from the Mafia. Another knock, harder this time. Urgent. I grabbed my phone, pulled up 911 but didn't dial, and approached the door. Checked the peephole. Dante. He was leaning against the door frame like it was the only thing keeping him vertical. Even through the distorted fisheye lens, I could see the blood. Every instinct screamed to leave him there. Let him bleed, let him suffer, let him reap exactly what he'd sown. I opened the door. "Jesus Christ!" The words escaped before I could stop them. His white shirt was soaked crimson on the left side. His face was bruised, cut above the eyebrow, lips split. His knuckles were raw and bleeding. He looked like he'd gone 15 rounds with someone who fought back. And the haunted emptiness in his eyes was somehow worse than the physical damage. "Sorry." His voice was rough, slurred slightly. "Didn't know where else." His knees buckled. I caught him, barely. His weight slamming into me, the scent of blood and sweat and that damned cologne overwhelming. "Inside. Now. Can you walk?" "Yeah." He didn't sound convincing. I half-dragged, half-carried him to my couch, deposited him with minimal gentleness, and immediately went to work assessing the damage. My hands shook as I unbuttoned his shirt, peeling away fabric stuck to wounds with dried blood. "How bad?" he asked, watching me with unsettling intensity despite obvious pain. "I don't know yet. What happened?" "Business disagreement." "Dante, the less you know, the safer you are." He winced as I exposed the wound on his side. "How bad?" I forced myself to look clinically, professionally, at the gash running along his ribs. Deep, but not deep enough to hit anything vital. Still bleeding sluggishly. "You need stitches. Hospital." "No hospitals." "Dante, this needs proper medicals." "No hospitals." Each word was bitten off with finality. Questions, records, complications. Just. His hand caught mine, grip surprisingly strong. "Please. You must have supplies. Everyone in this business keeps supplies." I stared at him. "I'm not in this business." "Melissa. First aid kit, under the bathroom sink. This is going to hurt like hell." "Good." Something bitter crossed his expression. "I deserve it." I'd never stitched human flesh before. I'd taken a wilderness first aid course in college, back when I'd briefly dated a guy who loved camping, practiced on pigskin and synthetic wounds. But this, Dante's blood on my hands, his sharp intakes of breath, the way his muscles tensed under my fingers, was nothing like classroom exercises. "You're doing well," he murmured after the 4th stitch. "Shut up. I'm concentrating." "You could have left me in the hallway." My hand trembled, needle pausing mid-pull. "Don't." "You should have left me in the hallway, after everything I've done, the lies I've told, the way I've—" I said don't. I tied off the stitch more roughly than necessary. He didn't flinch. "I'm not having this conversation while you're bleeding on my couch." "When then?" His voice dropped to something raw. When will you let me apologize? When will you let me explain that every decision I've made has been wrong except wanting you? That I've burned down half my organization trying to punish myself for lying to you? That I... 5 more stitches, then you leave. I cut him off because hearing more would break something inside me I was working very hard to keep intact. And you don't come back. Silence settled, heavy and suffocating. I finished the stitches in mechanical silence, bandaged the wound, cleaned the cut above his eyebrow. My hands moved with clinical efficiency while my heart hammered against my ribs hard enough to hurt. Done, I finally said, stepping back. You should see a real doctor tomorrow. Check for internal bleeding, concussion, infection. Melissa. My name stopped me cold. Look at me. You need to leave. Look at me. I did finally, and immediately wished I hadn't. Because the Dante Rinaldi staring at me wasn't the controlled mafia boss or the calculated manipulator. This was someone stripped down to bone and truth, every defense shattered, every wall demolished. I tried not to want you, he whispered. From the moment you pushed that briefcase back, I knew you would destroy me. So I tried keeping it professional, keeping distance, convincing myself that owning your time was enough. But it wasn't. It will never be enough. And his voice cracked. I've done terrible things in my life, Melissa. Unforgivable things. But the worst thing I've ever done is make you complicit in my darkness, because I was too much of a coward to risk you walking away. Tears burned behind my eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm bleeding in your apartment at midnight, and for the first time in 15 years, I don't have the strength to lie. He stood, unsteady but determined, and moved toward me. Each step looked like it cost him. Because you deserve the truth. All of it. The truth is, you used me. But my voice lacked conviction. Yes, I used you. I manipulated you. I trapped you. He stopped close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his damaged body. And I would do it all again because the alternative, a world where you're not in my life, is unbearable. That's not romantic, Dante. That's obsession. I know. His hand lifted, hovering near my face, trembling slightly. I know what I am. I know what this is. But Melissa... His forehead dropped forward, resting against mine, and the contact sent electricity through every nerve ending. Tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me these 3 weeks of silence haven't been killing you the same way they've been killing me. Tell me you don't lie awake remembering how it felt when I almost kissed you. Lie to me convincingly enough, and I'll walk out that door and never bother you again. I should have lied, should have pushed him away, should have protected myself from the inevitable disaster that came from wanting a man like Dante Rinaldi. Instead, I whispered, I can't. His breath caught. Can't what? Can't lie to you. My hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath damaged skin and bandages. I hate you for what you did, for how you lied, how you trapped me, how you made me complicit. I hate that I can't trust you. I hate that you're dangerous and violent and everything I should run from. My fingers curled into his shirt. And I hate that I've never stopped wanting you, not for a single moment since you first said my name. The sound he made was half groan, half relief. His hands framed my face with devastating gentleness, thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. Melissa, he breathed, if I kiss you right now, there's no going back. I won't be able to pretend this is just business. I won't be able to maintain distance. I will want everything. Your time, your attention, your trust, your... Then kiss me. The words escaped before wisdom could intervene. Stop talking and just... His mouth crashed into mine. It wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic or sweet or any of the things first kisses were supposed to be. It was desperate, consuming, 3 months of tension detonating into pure need. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer. My fingers dug into his shoulders, careful of injuries, but unable to maintain any real distance. He tasted like copper and whiskey and something darker I couldn't name. His body was solid and warm and damaged against mine. Every point of contact felt electric, overwhelming, like touching a live wire and being unable to let go. I'd been kissed before. I'd had relationships, encounters, moments of passion. Nothing had ever felt like this. Like burning alive and finally breathing for the first time. Like falling and being caught simultaneously. Like making a terrible mistake that somehow felt inevitable. His mouth moved to my jaw, my throat, finding every sensitive point with devastating accuracy. Melissa. My name was prayer and curse. I want. The door slammed open with enough force to crack the frame. We jumped apart, breathing ragged, as Luca burst into my apartment. His expression was grim, phone in hand, every line of his body screaming urgency. Sir! He didn't apologize for the interruption. The Calabrese. They know where you are. We have maybe 10 minutes before. Get the car. Dante's voice shifted instantly from desperate to lethal. Every trace of vulnerability locked behind steel. Perimeter around this building. No one gets close to her. Already done. But you need to move. Now. Dante turned to me, and the look in his eyes, regret, longing, fury, nearly broke me. I have to go. I know. This isn't over. I know. I touched my lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. Be careful. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Since when do you care if I'm careful? Since you bled all over my couch and kissed me like the world was ending. The admission came easier than it should have. Go. Don't get yourself killed. He hesitated at the threshold, looking back with an expression I couldn't fully read. Melissa, what happened tonight? We'll talk about it when you're not running from people who want you dead. When you come back, I interrupted, we're going to have a very long conversation about boundaries, honesty, and why you thought bursting into my apartment bleeding was an acceptable life choice. Looking forward to it. Then he was gone, Luca at his heels, the door closing on the sound of footsteps echoing down the stairwell. I stood in my empty apartment, fingers pressed to my lips, surrounded by bloody gauze and the lingering scent of his cologne, and realized with absolute terrifying certainty that I was in love with a man who would probably destroy me. The worst part? I was going to let him. Can we just talk about this for a second? She just stitched him back together with her own hands. She kissed a man covered in blood. She knows he's dangerous, knows he's lied, knows this will probably destroy her. And she's falling anyway. If that doesn't break your heart and make it race at the same time, check your pulse. Subscribe if you understand what it's like to want something you know you shouldn't. Comment, Team Melissa, if you think she deserves better, or Team Dante, if you think he's redeemable. I'm building a community of people who understand that love isn't always clean. Be part of it. He didn't come back. The morning after the blood, the stitches, the kiss that had rewired something fundamental in my chest. I woke to 17 missed calls from Luca and a text that made my stomach drop. Situation contained. Mr. Rinaldi is secure. He'll contact you when appropriate. When appropriate turned into days, then a week, then 2. I tried calling. Every number I had for Dante went straight to voicemail or rang endlessly into silence. I showed up at his penthouse. The doorman informed me, with apologetic professionalism, that Mr. Rinaldi was traveling indefinitely and had left no forwarding information. I buried myself in work because the alternative was confronting the growing certainty that I'd imagined the desperation in his kiss, the vulnerability in his confession, the promise in his eyes when he'd said, "This isn't over." Apparently it was. The businesses ran smoothly without him. Too smoothly. As if he'd systematically removed himself from every operation, every decision, every trace of daily management. Invoices that used to require his approval now came pre-signed. Vendor contracts I would have reviewed with him were handled by lawyers I'd never met. Even Luca became scarce, communicating only through terse emails about operational necessities. It was like Dante Rinaldi had decided to erase himself from my life with the same calculated precision he'd used to insert himself into it. "You look like hell," Marcus observed during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. 3 weeks had passed since the kiss, since the blood on my couch, since the moment everything had shifted and then shattered. "When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "Melissa, I'm fine. Just busy. The hotels need—" I stopped, staring at the expense report on my screen without actually seeing it. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You sound like you're grieving." The word hit too close to truth. "I have to go. Vendor meeting." I hung up before he could press further. The call from Hawthorne and Associates came on a Thursday afternoon, 5 weeks after Dante's disappearance. "Ms. Moreland, this is James Hawthorne. I represent Rinaldi Enterprises. We need to schedule a meeting regarding some legal documentation that requires your signature." "Would tomorrow at 2 p.m. work?" Legal documentation. My stomach twisted with familiar dread. What kind of documentation? "I'd prefer to discuss the details in person. It's rather complex. My office is in Midtown. I'll text you the address." He hung up before I could refuse. Hawthorne and Associates occupied the 43rd floor of a building that screamed old money and older secrets. The reception area was all mahogany and leather, with artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses. James Hawthorne himself was 60-something, silver-haired, with the kind of expensive suit that whispered rather than shouted wealth. "Ms. Moreland, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair across from his massive desk. "Can I offer you anything? Coffee? Water?" Answers would be nice. I sat, spine rigid. "Your call was deliberately vague." "Yes, well." He opened a folder with the careful precision of someone handling explosives. "What I'm about to discuss is highly confidential and, frankly, unprecedented in my 30 years of practice. Mr. Rinaldi came to me 6 weeks ago with very specific instructions." 6 weeks. Right after the kiss. Right before he disappeared. "What kind of instructions?" Hawthorne slid a document across the desk. The letterhead read, "Transfer of corporate assets and equity interests." "Mr. Rinaldi has transferred full legal ownership and operational control of the following entities to you, effective immediately." He ticked off items with his pen. "The Castellano Hotel, Impero Restaurant, Osteria Stella, the Tribeca Property Management Company, the legitimate wine import division of Brunello Imports. All clean assets, I assure you, thoroughly vetted, completely separate from any other business interests." The words weren't making sense. I stared at the document, at my name typed in precise legal language next to phrases like sole proprietor and complete authority and irrevocable transfer. "I don't understand." "You now own approximately $47 million in legitimate business assets." Hawthorne's voice remained professionally neutral. "Free and clear. No debt, no encumbrances, no strings attached. Mr. Rinaldi has also established a trust fund in your name containing an additional $15 million, accessible immediately." The room tilted slightly. "That's not possible." "I assure you it's entirely legal. Unusual, yes, but legal. Mr. Rinaldi was quite insistent that everything be done properly, that you face no legal jeopardy, that the assets be completely clean." He pushed another document forward. "He also left this." An envelope. Heavy paper, sealed with actual wax, pressed with what looked like a family crest. My name written in Dante's angular handwriting across the front. My hands shook as I reached for it. "I'll give you privacy," Hawthorne said, standing. "Take as much time as you need." The door clicked shut behind him. I sat alone in that expensive office, holding an envelope that weighed nothing and everything, unable to breathe properly. Finally, I broke the seal. Melissa, by the time you read this, you'll have spoken with Hawthorne. You'll know what I've done. And you'll be furious. I know you well enough to predict that much accurately. Let me be clear. This is not payment, not compensation, not a transaction. This is the only way I know to give you what you've always deserved. Freedom. Freedom from me, from my world, from the danger that follows me like a shadow and stains everything I touch. You were right when you said I ruin everything beautiful. You were right when you called me a coward. You were right about all of it. The businesses are yours because you've earned them. You've managed them brilliantly for months, made them more profitable and efficient than they've ever been. They should have been yours from the beginning. Consider this correction of an injustice. The money is yours because your mother deserves the best care available, your brother deserves freedom from his debts, and you deserve the chance to finish your degree or start over somewhere safe, or do anything other than survive. You've spent your entire adult life sacrificing for others. Let me, for once, give you the choice to live for yourself. I need you to know. What happened in your apartment wasn't a mistake. Kissing you, touching you, finally admitting what I've felt since you pushed that briefcase back across the table. None of that was wrong. What was wrong is everything that came before. The lies, the manipulation, the trap I built around you because I was too selfish and too scared to let you go. You asked me once why I did it, why I lied about the businesses, why I couldn't just be honest. The truth? Because honesty meant risk. It meant you might look at me, really see me, and choose to walk away. And I couldn't bear that. So I built a cage of necessity and called it opportunity. I made you need me so you couldn't leave me. That's not love, Melissa. That's possession. And you deserve so much better. I'm leaving New York, leaving the operations I've built. Luca will handle the elements you shouldn't be near, and I've ensured you're completely separated from anything illegal. You're safe, protected, free. If you're reading this and feeling angry, good. Be angry, hate me, curse my name. You've earned that right. But please, don't refuse these assets out of spite or pride. They're yours because you've worked for them, because you're brilliant and capable and strong, and because for once in my miserable life, I want to do something right. I love you. I don't have the right to say it, and I'm not asking for anything in return. But you should know. You should know that someone looked at you, at your integrity, your fire, your refusal to bend, and thought you were worth burning down their entire world for. You pushed $3 million back across a table because you wouldn't be bought. I'm giving you $47 million and walking away because I won't be the one who destroys you. Be extraordinary, Melissa. You already are. Dante P.S. The letter contains the access codes to a secure server with documentation of every legitimate transaction, every clean asset, every piece of proof you'll need if questions ever arise. You're protected. I made sure of it. The letter shook in my hands. I read it twice, 3 times, 5 times. Each pass revealed new layers of meaning, new admissions, new devastation, the careful handwriting, the crossed-out words where he'd reconsidered phrasing, the slight smudge near the end where something, water, maybe tears, had blurred the ink. This wasn't a business transaction. This was goodbye. This was Dante Rinaldi, notorious mafia boss, ruthless criminal, the man who'd tried to break me with a briefcase full of cash, giving me everything and asking for nothing because he'd finally realized that loving me meant letting me go. And I wanted to scream, wanted to tear the letter into pieces, wanted to storm into whatever hole he'd disappeared into and demand he explain how he could kiss me like I was oxygen and then vanish like smoke. Wanted to tell him that he didn't get to make this choice for me, Didn't get to decide what I could handle or who I could love. Wanted to tell him that walking away wasn't noble, it was just another version of the same cowardice that had made him lie in the first place. "Ms. Moreland?" Hawthorne's voice came through the door, gentle. "Do you need more time?" I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and wiped my face roughly. "Where is he?" Silence. "Mr. Hawthorne, where is Dante?" "I'm not at liberty to—" "Sicily." The word came from somewhere deep, some instinct I didn't know I possessed. "He went to Sicily, didn't he? Back to wherever his family is from. Back to the vineyards and mountains and everything he probably ran from years ago." More silence, but it was confirmation enough. I stood, legs unsteady. "I need copies of everything, the asset transfers, the trust documents, all of it. And I need you to tell me exactly how much legal exposure I have from my time managing Brunello imports." "Ms. Moreland, I assure you Mr. Rinaldi was extremely thorough." "Tell me anyway." Hawthorne sighed, opened another folder. "None. Brunello Imports has been restructured. The division you managed is now completely separate, thoroughly audited, and entirely clean. The other operations have been transferred to different management under different corporate entities. You were never listed as an officer or signatory for anything questionable. Your exposure is zero." He protected me. Extensively, almost obsessively. Hawthorne met my eyes. "In my professional opinion, Ms. Moreland, whatever else Dante Rinaldi might be, he cares about you more than he cares about his empire. That's not something I've ever seen before." I left the office with a briefcase full of documents, a net worth that made me dizzy, and a certainty burning in my chest. Dante thought walking away was protection. Dante thought giving me everything and disappearing was love. Dante thought he got to decide this alone. He was wrong. I pulled out my phone and searched for flights to Sicily. The next one left in 18 hours. I booked it. Then I called Marcus. "I need you to do something for me." "Mel, what's wrong? You sound—" "I need you to watch Mom for a few weeks. Maybe longer. I'm leaving the country." "What? Why? Where?" "Sicily. I'm going to Sicily to confront a man who thinks running away is the same as letting me go." I climbed into a taxi, gave the driver my address. "And I'm either going to forgive him or kill him. Probably both." "Is this about—" Marcus paused. "About that mafia boss? The one from the video?" "His name is Dante. And yes." "Melissa, that's insane." "I know. I'll call you when I land." I hung up, stared out the taxi window at Manhattan streaming past, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Purpose. Dante Rinaldi had tried to break me with money. Then he'd tried to save me with money. Now I was going to teach him that I was never the one who needed saving. He was. Sicily in October was nothing like New York. The taxi from Palermo Airport wound through mountains that seemed older than time itself, past villages of sun-bleached stone and churches with bells that rang across valleys. Olive groves stretched toward horizons painted in amber and gold. Vineyards climbed hillsides in perfect rows, heavy with grapes ready for harvest. It was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. The driver, an elderly man who'd asked no questions when I'd shown him the address from Dante's letter, finally stopped at a wrought iron gate. Beyond it, a long driveway disappeared into rows of grapevines, and in the distance I could see a villa, stone and terracotta, ancient and elegant, surrounded by cypress trees that swayed in the Mediterranean breeze. "Rinaldi Estate," the driver said in heavily accented English. He crossed himself. "Old family. Powerful family." I paid him, grabbed my single suitcase, and watched him drive away faster than seemed necessary. The gate wasn't locked. I walked. The villa emerged gradually as I moved through the vineyards, 3 stories of weathered stone, balconies draped with flowering vines, windows that glowed warm against the approaching dusk. I could hear voices in the distance, workers finishing the day's harvest, their Italian rapid and musical. Then I heard another voice, one that made me stop. Walking. Dante. He stood on a terrace overlooking the vineyards, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing with his free hand in a way that suggested he was not pleased with whatever he was hearing. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a white linen shirt rolled to the elbows, and looked so fundamentally different from the Manhattan Mafia boss that I almost didn't recognize him. Almost. But I would know those shoulders anywhere. The way he carried tension in his spine, the particular angle of his jaw when he was angry. I climbed the terrace steps. He turned at the sound of my footsteps, and the phone slipped from his hand. For 3 heartbeats, neither of us moved. Dante stared at me like I was a ghost, a hallucination, something his mind had conjured from loneliness and distance. Color drained from his face. His hand reached out, stopped midair, curled into a fist. No. The word was barely audible. You can't be here. Hello to you, too. I set down my suitcase with deliberate calm, though my pulse hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nice place, very rustic, good wine country. Melissa. My name cracked in his mouth. He moved toward me, stopped, looked around like he expected gunmen to materialize from the grapevines. How did you find me? How did you even— You left breadcrumbs. The letter mentioned Sicily. Hawthorne's assistant was surprisingly helpful after I explained I was the new owner of several businesses and needed to discuss urgent matters with my predecessor. I crossed my arms. Also, your family owns half a mountain. Not exactly hard to locate once I had a region. You need to leave. He was already moving, reaching for my suitcase. Right now. I'll have someone drive you back to Palermo, get you on the next flight. No. He froze. Melissa, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. I stepped closer, close enough to see the shadows under his eyes, the new lines bracketing his mouth, the way he'd lost weight in the weeks since I'd stitched him back together. Explain why you thought disappearing was acceptable. Explain why you kissed me like I was the only thing keeping you alive and then vanished. Explain why you gave me everything and asked for nothing and expected me to just— What? Move on? Be grateful? Forget you? Yes. His voice was raw. That's exactly what I expected. What I hoped. Melissa, the letter. I told you everything in the letter. I told you why I had to leave, why you're better off without me, why— You don't get to decide what I'm better off without. The words came out sharper than intended. You don't get to make unilateral decisions about my life, my safety, my heart. Not anymore. Your heart? He laughed, bitter, broken. Melissa, I don't deserve your heart. I barely deserve your contempt. I lied to you, trapped you, made you complicit in crimes, and the best thing I can do, the only good thing I'm capable of, is stay as far from you as possible. That's not love, Dante. That's cowardice. The accusation hit like a physical blow. His jaw clenched, hands curling into fists at his sides. Yes, he said quietly. It is. I am a coward. I'm a criminal, a liar, a man stained with violence and blood and sins you can't even imagine. My father built this empire on brutality. My grandfather before him. The Rinaldi name is synonymous with fear in Sicily, with corruption in New York, with death everywhere in between. That's my inheritance, Melissa. That's what you're asking to be part of. I'm not asking for your inheritance. I'm asking for you. You don't know what you're asking for. His voice rose, desperate now. You don't know what I've done, the people I've hurt, the lives I've destroyed. You see the man who paid your mother's hospital bills and kissed you in your apartment and gave you a fortune. But that's not who I am. That's who I pretend to be when I'm around you because you make me want to be something better, something cleaner. And it's a lie, Melissa. It's always been a lie. Then tell me the truth. I moved closer, invading his space, refusing to let him retreat into self-loathing. All of it. Every dark corner. Every terrible thing. Every reason you think I should run. Say it out loud, and let me decide for myself." He stared at me for a long moment, something like anguish flickering across his features. Then he turned, gripped the terrace railing, and began to speak. "I killed a man when I was 19. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Not in self-defense, not in the heat of passion. I executed him because my father ordered it, because he'd betrayed our family, and because that's what Rinaldi's do. I've killed 6 more since then, maybe 7. I lost count after the 4th. I didn't speak, didn't move. I run protection rackets, loan operations, smuggling networks. I've bribed judges, corrupted politicians, destroyed businesses that wouldn't cooperate. The legitimate companies you now own, they exist because I needed clean revenue streams. I built them on the backs of illegal operations, and no matter how pristine the accounting is now, they're still rooted in blood money." He turned to face me, and the naked pain in his eyes was devastating. "I'm alone, Melissa. Always alone. Because everyone in my world either fears me or wants to use me or plots to destroy me. I can't trust anyone. Can't love anyone. The last woman I cared about, 15 years ago, before I was this, they killed her to hurt me, slit her throat and left her in my apartment as a message. I found her body, I cleaned up her blood, and I spent the next month systematically murdering everyone responsible." "Dante, I'm not finished," his voice cracked. "You want the truth? Here it is. I am fundamentally broken, damaged beyond repair. The violence comes naturally to me now. The manipulation, the lies, the cold calculations, they're not an act. They're who I've become. And when you pushed that briefcase back, when you looked at me with disgust and defiance, you became the most dangerous thing in my world. Not because you could hurt me, because you made me want to be different. Made me remember what it felt like to want something beyond power and fear and control. You made me hope, Melissa. And hope is a luxury men like me can't afford." Tears streamed down my face now, but I didn't wipe them away. "I left because staying meant destroying you." His hands reached toward me, stopped, fell. "I left because I love you too much to watch you become collateral damage in my war. I left because the best version of myself, the cleanest, most honest thing I'm capable of, is walking away and giving you the freedom to live a life that doesn't include me." "You're right," I said quietly. He flinched like I'd struck him. "You are broken. You are violent. You've done terrible things, and you probably can't be fully redeemed." I stepped forward, closing the distance he'd tried to maintain. "But you're also the man who tested my integrity because you valued it, who respected my boundaries when you could have demolished them, who paid my mother's hospice bills anonymously because you couldn't bear to see me suffer, who gave me everything and asked for nothing, who stitched himself together with rage and loneliness but still somehow found room to care about someone other than himself." "Melissa, that doesn't erase—" "I'm not trying to erase anything." My hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath my palms. "I'm trying to tell you that I see all of you, the darkness and the light, the monster and the man, and I'm choosing you anyway. Not because I'm naive or broken or confused. Because I love you, Dante Rinaldi. I love you angry, and I love you scared, and I love you trying to protect me by running away. And I am not leaving Sicily until you understand that." His control shattered. His hands framed my face with desperate gentleness, thumbs brushing away my tears. "You shouldn't love me. You should hate me. You should be anywhere but here." "Too bad. I'm terrible at doing what I should." "Melissa." His forehead dropped to mine, and his breath came in ragged gasps. "If I let myself have this, have you, I won't be able to let go. I won't be strong enough to walk away again. You'll be stuck with me, with this life, with all the danger and violence and good." I pushed up on my toes, bringing our mouths within inches of contact. I don't want you to let go. I don't want you to be strong enough to walk away. I want you to be selfish and possessive and desperate enough to choose me despite every reason not to. This is insane. I know. You'll regret this. Probably. I'll hurt you eventually. Not intentionally, but… Dante. I gripped his shirt, pulling him down toward me. Shut up and kiss me. This kiss was nothing like the first. That one had been desperate, frantic, months of tension detonating into need. This was slow, inevitable, like water, returning to the sea, like gravity pulling planets into orbit. His lips moved against mine with aching tenderness, hands sliding into my hair, body pressed close but controlled. He kissed me like I was precious, breakable, the most valuable thing he'd ever touched. He kissed me like he was terrified I'd disappear if he wasn't careful. He kissed me like a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to hope and was relearning the language. When we finally broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, hands tangled in each other's clothes, his voice was wrecked. I love you. The words sounded like a confession, a prayer, a curse. God help us both, but I love you. I know. I smiled against his mouth. You gave me $47 million and ran away to Italy. Kind of gave yourself away. Melissa. The gunshot shattered the moment. Dante moved faster than thought, tackling me behind the terrace railing as another shot cracked through the air. Stone exploded near where we'd been standing. Shouts erupted from the vineyard. Italian, rapid, urgent. Stay down. Dante's voice had transformed into something lethal, all vulnerability erased. He pulled a gun from somewhere, the small of his back maybe, and his eyes scanned the darkening landscape with predatory focus. How many? The question wasn't directed at me. Luca materialized from inside the villa, weapon drawn, face grim. At least 4, maybe more. They came through the East Vineyard. Calabrese crew probably. Someone talked. Get her inside, now. Dante didn't look at me. Basement safe room. No arguments. Dante. Now, Melissa. He turned, and the man looking at me was the mafia boss I'd met in that Manhattan restaurant. Cold, calculating, absolutely lethal. I will handle this. You will survive. Those are the only acceptable outcomes. Luca's hand closed around my arm, pulling me toward the villa's entrance. I looked back once. Dante stood at the railing, silhouetted against the sunset, gun in hand, every line of his body radiating violence about to be unleashed. He'd been right about one thing. I'd just walked into a world I couldn't walk away from, and I'd done it willingly, with my eyes open, because loving Dante Rinaldi meant accepting all of him, including the monster. The safe room was built into the villa's foundation, thick stone walls, reinforced door, security monitors showing every angle of the property. Luca deposited me there with clinical efficiency, handed me a phone, and said 4 words before disappearing back into the chaos. Don't leave this room. I watched the monitors, watched Dante move through the vineyard like death incarnate, 3 men at his back, watched muzzle flashes light up the darkening landscape. Watched figures drop, retreat, vanish into the grapevines. The violence lasted 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Then silence. Dante reappeared on the monitor, speaking rapidly into his phone, blood on his shirt. His or someone else's? I couldn't tell. He gestured toward the villa, and men I didn't recognize began dragging bodies away from the terrace. I pressed my hand against the screen like I could reach through glass and steel to touch him. He came for me an hour later. The door opened, and Dante stood in the threshold, blood spattered, exhausted, alive. His eyes found mine with desperate intensity, cataloging every detail to confirm I was unharmed. Are you hurt? His voice was rough. No. You? Nothing that matters. He stepped inside, closed the door, leaned against it like it was the only thing keeping him upright. They're gone. Dead or running. We have maybe 48 hours before the Calabrese regroup and come back with more men. 48 hours. I stood slowly, legs unsteady. What happens then? War. The word was simple, brutal. Full war between families, blood in the streets, retaliation, counter-retaliation, escalation, until either they're destroyed or I am. His jaw clenched. This is what I was trying to protect you from, Melissa. This is why I left. Because my enemies don't just kill me, they destroy everything I care about first. How did they know I was here? Someone talked. Someone always talks. He ran a hand through his hair, smearing blood across his forehead. Or they've been watching, waiting for a weakness to exploit. And you, his voice cracked. You're the greatest weakness I've ever had. I crossed the small space between us. Then we need to make me a strength instead. What? You keep trying to protect me by pushing me away, but I'm already here, Dante, already in danger just by loving you. So stop trying to shield me and start teaching me how to survive in your world. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You don't know what you're asking for. Then tell me, specifically, what does standing beside you actually mean? He was silent for a long moment, something like grief flickering across his features. Then he began to speak. It means you'll never be safe. Not really. There will always be someone trying to hurt me through you. Kidnapping attempts, assassination plots, constant surveillance. You'll need bodyguards everywhere. You'll need to learn to shoot, to fight, to recognize threats. You'll need to accept that the phone might ring in the middle of the night with news that someone you care about has been killed because of their proximity to me. I didn't interrupt. It means you'll be complicit in things you can't reconcile with your morals. You'll know about crimes I commit. You'll benefit from money earned through violence. You'll attend dinners with people who've ordered murders and smile politely. You'll become part of a system you despise, and there's no moral high ground left when you're sleeping with the devil. Keep going. It means isolation. People you love will be safer if you distance yourself from them. Your brother, your friends, anyone not already in this world becomes a liability. You'll spend holidays in fortified compounds. You'll raise children, if we're foolish enough to have them, knowing they inherit my enemies along with my name. You'll watch me come home covered in blood and pretend you don't know whose blood it is. His voice was raw now, desperate to make me understand. And worst of all, it means watching me become more of what I already am. Because this life doesn't make people better, Melissa. It corrodes them, hardens them, turns them into efficient, emotionless machines that calculate body counts instead of feeling guilt. You'll watch the man you love disappear by inches until you're not sure there's anything left worth loving. Are you finished? I asked quietly. No. He moved closer, hands framing my face with devastating gentleness. One more thing. It means I will love you with an intensity that borders on obsession. I will be possessive, jealous, overprotective. I will make decisions you disagree with to keep you safe. I will lie to you when the truth is too dangerous. I will be the worst possible partner for someone who values independence and honesty. And I won't apologize for it because keeping you alive will always matter more to me than keeping you happy. Tears tracked down my face, but I held his gaze. Okay. Okay? He repeated the word like it was incomprehensible. Melissa, were you listening? I just described a nightmare. You described your world. The real one, not the sanitized version you tried to sell me with legitimate businesses and clean accounting. I covered his hands with mine. And I'm telling you, okay. I choose it. I choose you. All of it. You're insane. Probably. I smiled through tears. But I didn't fly 6,000 miles to have you talk me out of this. I came here to tell you that running away doesn't protect me. It just makes us both miserable. So stop trying to be noble and start being honest. Do you want me to stay? His throat worked. More than I've ever wanted anything. Do you love me? Desperately, dangerously, in ways that probably aren't healthy. Can you promise me you'll stop making unilateral decisions about my safety and actually talk to me before you disappear, or sign over your empire, or do anything else catastrophically stupid? A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. I can try. I'll probably fail sometimes. That's all I'm asking. Not perfection, just partnership. I reached up, brushing blood from his cheekbone. I'm not fragile, Dante. I'm not something you need to protect by keeping at a distance. I'm a woman who survived poverty, loss, grief, and you. I can survive your world too. If you'll let me. If I let you. He exhaled shakily. Melissa, you're the strongest person I've ever met. That was never the question. The question is whether I have the right to ask this of you. To let you make this choice knowing it can't be undone. You don't have to ask. I'm telling you. I pulled his face down to mine. I love you. I'm staying. And we're going to figure this out together. The violence, the danger, the complications, all of it. Together. Or not at all. Together, he repeated, like testing the word's weight. I've never done together before. Good, then we'll both be learning. He kissed me then, soft, reverent, like a vow being sealed. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, and for the first time since I'd arrived, he looked almost peaceful. We need a plan, he murmured. The Calabrese won't stop. And if they know about you, others will find out. We need to neutralize the threat, establish boundaries, make it clear that you're protected. How? I call a sit-down, all the families, formally introduce you as my... He hesitated. What are you, exactly? Your partner, I said firmly. In every sense of the word. I manage your legitimate businesses. I stand beside you in your world. I'm not a wife hidden away or a mistress kept in shadows. I'm visible, active, protected. Something fierce lit in his eyes. They'll fight it. Women don't hold positions of power in this world. The old guard will see it as weakness, as breaking tradition. Then they'll learn tradition is evolving. I straightened my spine. I didn't survive 4 years in Manhattan's restaurant industry by being demure. I can handle territorial mafia bosses. You really are insane. But he was smiling now, genuine, warm, the expression transforming his features into something almost boyish. And absolutely magnificent. I know. I kissed him again, quick and certain. Now, do you have a shower in this fortress? Because we're both covered in blood, and I'd like to have this conversation about our future while not looking like we've just survived a murder attempt. Fair point. He laced his fingers through mine, leading me toward the door. Also, about the future. Yes? If we're doing this, really doing this, there are things you need to know. Allies, enemies, territories, codes, the unwritten rules that keep this world from complete chaos. And you need to meet my mother. I stopped walking. Your mother? She lives in the West Wing. She's been here the whole time, protected by my men. She's going to have opinions about an American woman involving herself in family business. His expression turned wry. Strong opinions, loudly expressed. In Sicilian. Can't wait. Liar. We showered, separately, because even in crisis Dante maintained unexpected propriety, and reconvened in the villa's main sitting room. It was all stone and exposed beams, comfortable furniture that had clearly been here for generations, windows overlooking vineyards now patrolled by armed men. Luca was already there, along with 3 others I didn't recognize. They stood when we entered, watching me with undisguised curiosity and wariness. "Gentlemen," Dante said, his voice carrying absolute authority, "this is Melissa Moreland. She manages our legitimate operations, and as of tonight, she's under the family's full protection. Anyone who threatens her answers to me personally. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me personally. She has access to all financial records, all clean businesses, and my complete trust. Are we clear?" Silence. Then one by one they nodded. "Good." Dante gestured to me. "Melissa, this is my inner circle. Luca, you know. This is Marco, my cousin who handles Italian operations, Giovanni, our legal counsel, and Franco, head of security." I met each of their eyes in turn. "Gentlemen, I know this is unusual. I know you probably have concerns about my presence, my knowledge, my impact on operations. I'm happy to address those concerns directly. But let's be clear, I'm not going anywhere. So we can work together, or we can make this difficult. Your choice." Marco's mouth twitched with something that might have been approval. "You have balls at least. That's something." "I prefer ovaries of steel, but sure." He laughed, genuine, surprised. "I like her. She can stay." "Wasn't asking permission," Dante said mildly, but noted. We spent the next 3 hours planning. The sit-down would happen in Rome, neutral territory, in 1 week. Representatives from all 5 major families would attend. Dante would present me formally, establish my role, and make it clear that any action against me was action against him. "It's risky," Giovanni warned. "The Calabrese are already agitated. This might provoke them further." "Let them be provoked." Dante's voice was cold. "They attacked my home, endangered my family, and declared war. I'm offering them one chance to accept peace terms. If they refuse, we end them." The casual way he said "end them" should have frightened me. Instead, I felt oddly calm. This was his world. These were his rules, and I'd chosen to stand in them. Around midnight, the others left. Dante and I remained, sitting close on a couch worn soft by generations of use. "Second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "Not one." I leaned into his shoulder. "You?" "Constant, perpetual, ongoing." His arm wrapped around me. "But also, hope. For the first time in 15 years, I'm looking at a future that contains more than violence and loneliness. Because of you." No pressure. Immense pressure. Crushing, actually. But his voice was warm. "Melissa? Thank you." "For what?" "For being too stubborn to let me go. For choosing this broken, violent, impossible life. For making me believe I might be capable of something beyond destruction." He kissed the top of my head. "For loving me when I don't deserve it." "You're welcome." I tilted my face up to his. "Just promise me one thing. Anything. When the next impossible situation happens, and it will, you talk to me before you make grand gestures or disappear or give away your empire. We face it together. Always." "Together," he agreed. "Always." The attack came at dawn. Not a physical attack, something worse. Luca burst into our room. We'd fallen asleep tangled, together on the couch, holding his phone, face grim. "Sir, we have a problem." Dante was awake instantly, on his feet, lethal. "What kind of problem?" "The Calabrese just sent a message to every family in Italy and New York." Luca's jaw clenched. "They're offering $5 million for information leading to Melissa's location, $10 million for her capture. They've made her the target." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I stood slowly, heart hammering but voice steady. Then I guess we'd better make sure that sit-down happens fast. Dante turned to me, something fierce and proud blazing in his eyes. You're not afraid. I'm terrified, I corrected. But I'm also not running. We deal with this, together. He pulled me close, fierce and possessive. Together. Outside, the Sicilian sun rose over the vineyards, painting everything in gold and shadow, beautiful and dangerous. Like the life I'd chosen. Like the man I loved. This was only the beginning, and I was ready. 15,000 words. You stayed with me for 15,000 words. That means something. That means you're not just watching, you're invested. You care about Melissa. You care about Dante. You care about whether love can survive in a world built on blood. So do I. That's why I need you to subscribe. Not because I want numbers, because I want you specifically in the community when part 2 drops. I want your comments, your theories, your rage when something goes wrong. I want you here for the wedding, or the funeral, or whatever insane ending this story demands. Hit subscribe, become part of this, and comment one word, together, if you believe they can survive this. Please, I need to know I'm not screaming into the void here.